Well, good morning. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for coming. I would just make a few comments. If you, for the next few weeks, as you come, please note that there is parking in the back because the parking spaces will be reduced by the mounds of snow. So remember, you can always go around back and come in the back door, and it might ultimately be a lot closer than coming from the tundra out there, okay? So we thank you for being here. And then one more thing, everybody today, when you leave, everyone is to take an armful of snow home so that we can get rid of some of this. It will be with us till May. We have any visitors this morning? From where? From where? Altoona. Anybody else? Okay. Well, welcome to all of you who are here, and we thank you for being with us today. In the gospel today, Jesus has just been thrown out of his hometown, if you remember last week, in Nazareth, and he's gone back to Capernaum, which is where Simon and James and John lived. And that will become the center for his public ministry. And in that public ministry, he will reach out around the lake of Gennesaret, and that lake, which is also known as the Sea of Galilee, becomes very important in the stories of the gospel. But in this story today, it's in the very early days of his ministry, and he's preaching to the people. And he says to Simon, he said, "Let me use your boat." He says, "I'm going to sit in it and preach to the people on the shore." And so he does that. When he's all done, he says to Simon, "Okay, let's go out into the sea and catch some fish." Now, Simon Peter, James, and John were professional fishermen. That's what they did for a living. And they knew the sea. And they had been working all night, the scripture tells us. That they were working all night and didn't catch anything. And so Jesus says this guy from this carpenter from the mountains is telling them about fishing. So they were at best incredulous. But Simon said, "Oh, well, okay, let's humor the old guy." And so they went out, and all of a sudden they had the biggest catch of their life. So much so, it impressed Peter so much so that he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Get away from me, because obviously you have more power than I would." So how do you impress a fisherman? You catch more fish than he does, right? So Jesus knew that. And oftentimes in our own lives, the story of faith is the same for us. That God gives us something to think about. God gives us an opportunity. He gives us a challenge. He gives us a situation in which the best is called forth from us, and we don't believe it. We humor him. We humor God. But people of faith go on the journey anyway. People on faith humor God and go and do it anyway. And like Peter, they will find abundance if they but trust. But trust isn't easy for us. Trust is not something we do very well, is it? We like to be in control. We like to do it ourselves. To the day he died, my father would never pay a bill by mail, even though he was a mailman. Maybe he knew something. You always went to the bank and you paid the gas bill and you paid all this other stuff. And you would certainly know electronic banking would have been lost on him. Just would not have trusted that. The same is true of all of us, especially in matters of faith. We are very unwilling to just kind of abandon ourselves to God. We want control. We like control. And as long as we are controlling, there's not room for God. So as you and I pray today, and as this powerlessness that we need in order to come to experience faith comes over us, then in our lives, we need to learn more to depend on God. In the midst of this snowfall, some of us felt powerlessness. What do I do with all this snow? Okay, but you're here, aren't you? And you might even have had to talk to your husband or your wife, right? I talked to some who didn't have power this weekend either, and they said we played games and we talked. Wow. And nobody died from it. So as you and I pray today, look at the challenges that God has given you. Look at the challenges that God has placed before you, no matter what they might be. And see within those challenges the opportunity for the biggest catch of your life. Like Peter, who knew everything there was to know about fishing, he was surprised by a carpenter. Well, the same is true of us. We might think we know the best way. We might think we might know what's best for us or for our children or for our family or something else. But just maybe, God has a different way. So as you and I pray today, let us think of whatever challenges us today. Let us think about what God might be throwing in front of us today, and let us humor God. Let us say, all right, God, I'll do it your way. And if we try it, if we have the courage to trust, our nets will be filled to the breaking point. It's a matter of faith. And faith is not reason. Faith is something totally different. So let us be men and women of faith. Let us get ourselves out of the way. And let us simply trust in God. And in doing so, our nets will be filled. Abundance will be ours. And we will see that God really was right. We did survive. And we prospered. God's calling each of us today to something. Whatever it might be, trust. And in trusting, come to know the abundance of God's love. Be at peace.